Hi, this is 365801 and this is another reviewing male romance video, and this is for If This Gets Out. Now I say this is a reviewing male romance video, and that is true because there are two main male characters who are men and they have a romance, so it's an Achillean romance, but this is in fact a reviewing LGBTQIA plus YA. There is a queer romance within a young adult novel. I know that it's being classified as YA, so I am 100% convinced and sure that this is a young adult queer romance story. Now, I actually got a copy of If This Gets Out, written by Sophie, Gonzales and Cale Dietrich, several months ago through NetGalley. They approved me for a copy, I think it was around October or November. I had all good intentions to download it, read it, do the review, even before the release date, which was in December. And it just didn't happen. I kept picking it up and I'd read a few pages, and I even got a couple of chapters in. I think I got to like end of chapter 4. And I just couldn't keep reading it. I think it was due to the fact that the formatting of the ARC copy was not great. It just didn't look very good on my Kindle app. It just didn't hold me. So that when there was extra additional things like text messages or phone conversations or anything like that, you couldn't really tell because of the way that the formatting was removed from that ebook. And so I only actually got it finished when I was able to pick up a copy through my local library, and therefore I was able to read the physical copy and have the proper formatted book in my hands. And I think that made a huge difference to the enjoyment and the ability to just race through the book. It took me several months and I wasn't making any progress with the NetGalley ebook copy, but as soon as I had the physical copy, I read it in one sitting. So I do think I would recommend reading it through the physical copy if you can. Now, If This Gets Out follows two 18-year-olds, Ruben Montez and Zach Knight, who are two members of the boy band Saturday, one of the biggest acts in America. Along with their bandmates, Angel Fan and John Braxton, the four are teen heartbreakers in front of the cameras and best friends backstage. But privately, cracks are starting to form. Their once easy rapport is straining under the pressures of fame, and Ruben confides in Zach that he's feeling smothered by management's pressure to stay in the closet. On a whirlwind tour through Europe with both an unrelenting schedule and minimal supervision, Ruben and Zach come to rely on each other more and more, and their already close friendship evolves into a romance. But when they decide they're ready to tell their fans and live freely, Zach and Ruben start to truly realise that they will never have the support of their management. How can they hold tight to each other when the whole world seems to want to come between them? Now, what was given in that summary is, I would have to be honest, about 85% of the actual book. So they give a lot of the story away just in this blurb. So if you like what you heard, you can just pick this book up with confidence, knowing that you're going to enjoy reading the whole story because you've actually already heard it. I'm quite surprised at how much was given away in the blurb. That's not usually what happens. The last, I would say 10 to 15% of the book does get a little bit more exciting, and there is something more to it, and was a good way to end the story, but I was quite surprised at how much of the story was shown in the blurb to start with. So if you like what you heard, give it a go. Now, as much as I might complain that there's way too much given away in the blurb, I would say there's a lot going on under the surface of this book that gets explored in greater detail when you actually read through the text. And so I'm going to go through a few things that I felt were pros in this story. The first one being, of course, the queer romance. Is there male romance? Is there Achillean romance? I am here for it. I will be reading this book. So yes, the first one is the queer romance. I love a bit of gay pining. I love it. I love it. Oh, my straight friend is my best friend. He's everything to me. but I can't actually have him because he's straight. Love it. And also the little cute touches, little times in the hotel, or sitting next to each other on the tour bus, or helping each other on stage. It's just the looks. I loved it. It was really good fun. I really enjoyed the budding romance between these two. And obviously, when it comes down to it, some of the other aspects, such as pro number 2, the bisexual awakening, when we have Zach, who doesn't really know how he feels and then kind of starts to feel some feelings, and then of course that's when the drama happens and we get a lot more of the issues of someone having to go through some sort of bisexual awakening, that idea that maybe they're not as straight as they thought they were, maybe they are a little bit queer, and along with that comes some of the drama, some of the tension and the fights. And this is where pro number 3 comes in, the varied characters. Now, I have to say, the boy band in general is not really something that I'm all that much of a fan of, but these boys were just delightful. I was never a big boy band fan, but these 4 really, you wanted to cheer for them. You wanted them to do their best. You wanted them to have a good life, and you wanted the best for them. So it was really good to go along on their journey. I really liked Ruben and his absolutely awful mother and how he had to just deal with that. Zach and his anxiety, and then Angel, who has the most tragic story, and that's the whole thing. Like, he's a great character. I pretty much read this story just for Angel, and John just being like with a stick up his ass. But the thing was, the 4 of them together were really good friends and good characters to go along on this journey with. I really wanted them to be okay. And as a mother, as a mother figure, because I'm far too old to be like, yay, boy bands. But for me, they were varied in the fact that they were flawed characters. As much as they were all cinnamon rolls, they're teenage boys. So they were annoying as fuck. For me, as an adult woman, I'm like, oh man, that's annoying. But at the same time, you could see them as being real 3-dimensional characters, which was fantastic. The fact that they had their flaws and they had their moments when they were in moods with each other and they said the wrong thing or they did the wrong thing, and they were being, in a sense, manipulated by their management, or they weren't being manipulated and they could see what was going on. And I really liked all these different facets of the different characters, especially when it came to what they were portraying in front of their audience and what they were like behind the scenes, backstage. So for me, they were the main driving force of the story. So although it was a queer romance, for me this was much more of a boy band story, and the 4 characters were equally as important for driving the narrative. Now that kind of leads me on to pro number 4, which is the fact that when you get a boy band, you're gonna get a bit of shipping. And the fact that these 4 boys did at one point in time during this story engage in a shipping discussion. A discussion of their ships and the different configurations therein, and their different shipping names. Angel and John are the main ship, apparently. So Ainjon is their couple name, their ship name. And when they, as a foursome, were having these discussions, it was quite interesting about what they found entertaining and what they found a little bit not so much entertaining, and how that shipping discussion goes on Twitter. It's the whole anti-shippers and pro-shippers. But what's it like to be someone who is shipped? And what's it like to be someone who actually has, fan art drawn of them, or, fan fiction written about them? And so they had this discussion, which I I thought was really interesting, because you sometimes see celebrities being interviewed and then they get shown or they discuss how their character that they play in this movie or this character is with this character, but when it's actual people, is it any different? And so these boys were quite open about it, in the fact that they were amused in some way, not necessarily that bothered about it. Angel, being the best boy ever, is kind of like, yeah, but it's not real, so it's okay. And I thought that they were all pretty open to the idea that this was going to happen and it was okay, except when it wasn't. Now, as mentioned in the blurb, the two members, Zach and Ruben, do end up having their friendship evolving into a romance, but the management don't particularly want them to come out, and therefore their shipping name and their shipping couple is kind of suppressed a bit, and that leads to some issues as well. Now, pro number 5 is the mental health rep, and just health in general. I think that was quite a good thing that they mentioned so much. You know, Ruben has to deal with a mother who is absolutely awful. She's abusive, and the rest of the band members are fully aware that she is abusive towards him. And I think anyone who's had a mother say anything negative to them is like, yes. But this mother is particularly bad. So you can see it's like, well, at least my mother's not like that, because she's awful. Zach, on the other hand, has anxiety and has to deal with a lot of mental health issues as well. You've got Angel, who's having to deal with things and not choosing a healthy outlet, and therefore we know that he's going through some things and choosing a way that is unhealthy, that is destructive. And then you've got John, who's just kind of having to try and juggle all of these things going on, and the responsibility that he has to deal with, and kind of ends up being a mother hen to everyone, or kind of retreating into himself. And so there was a lot of mental health rep on the page, and all of the different boys, they all deal with their own mental health in different ways, and it's not always healthy, it's not always good. So yeah, I liked the fact that it was there and it was on the page and it was discussed. Not always dealt with in the best way, but still it was good to see. Now the last pro number 6, is fame and celebrity. And not necessarily that this is a fame and celebrity story, it's that fame and celebrity, especially from a boy band perspective or a pop star perspective or a rock star perspective, we generally have this idea of like, well, you know, it's all glamour and glitz, except when it's not. And this was quite a good representation as a book of showing those two sides. That there is some positives and there is some negatives. There are some downsides of exhaustion and constant scrutiny, but there's also support from fans, and social media is also there as part of it. And so it's quite an interesting look at the modern take of fame and celebrity, and also about how the management or record companies do, in a sense, abuse their charges, because they have these boys and these characters were, you know, thrust into celebrity and fame at a very young age, around 15 or 16, and so they're only turning around 18 now in the story, and they've been children, and they are children, and they've signed contracts as children, and therefore these record companies have a duty of care to look after these children in their charge, you know, and they're not doing it. They're not there to look after the welfare of these individuals. They're there to make money from these individuals. And what is fame and celebrity, and is it something that you actually want, and how much control do you have over it? Because these boys, these children have become superstars globally, and they will never have a life that is normal. because they will always be known as. You know, they'd be walking down the street in their 40s or 50s and someone's going to stop them and say, oh, hey, aren't you that guy who was in that band Saturday? You know, it's like, yeah, like 3 decades ago, thanks. Oh, my sister was a big fan. You know, they're always going to get that. They're never going to have that switch off for them, which from childhood is quite a big thing. So it was quite nice to see fame and celebrity being presented in a way that is not something that you might aspire to. I certainly came away from this book thinking, God, what an awful existence. Well, I would hate to have to deal with that. So yeah, it was interesting in that respect too. Now, when it comes to my rating of this book, I did enjoy it and I enjoyed certain aspects of it, but there were some points where I felt like the story itself was lagging. Maybe the plot wasn't going as quickly as I wanted. It felt a little bit rushed at the end, and also in the same way not 100% resolved. Like, it was resolved, but it wasn't really. They kind of left you hanging with a bit of hope, and I felt like, no, I want to know more. Like, how are these guys doing? And also, Angel is an absolute delight. Can we just get more for him? And he needs the world. And also, can we start calling him by his name, Reese? Because the whole Angel thing just really drove me nuts. So there was definitely some aspects that I liked about the book, and there was only just a little bit of something that pulled it down for me. It wasn't quite a full 5-star read. So as a YA queer romance, the queer romance is only one small part of the story. It's so much more, and so I'm going to give it a 4-star rating for this, if this gets out. So it's an interesting one that I thought was worth reading. I enjoyed it. I know everyone, I'm gonna mention it, guys, I'm gonna mention it. Everyone has been making comparisons with One Direction, that this is a One Direction fan fiction made into a full YA novel, and that might be the case, because I know that the writers have also discussed the comparisons. But I, someone who was never a One Direction fan because I'm already way too old, for me, I think this would really be compared to any boy band situation. You could literally just look at this as being any boy band in the history of boy bands and see how it applies to that boy band that you were a fan of when you were younger. So yeah, it was an interesting take on the mental health pressures of boy bands, is what I would actually class this YA as. As much as there was a queer romance there, that was secondary. It definitely puts it front and centre in the blurb, but I would say that was a secondary aspect to what was actually going on in this book. So it was interesting. And I do recommend you give it a read if you're enjoying queer romance YA, but you're also a fan of fame, celebrity, pop stars as themes as well. So if you read If This Gets Out, let me know what you thought in the comments down below. And if you've got any recommendations for some queer romance, whether it's YA or not, let me know down in the comments below and I'll give them a read and see if I can review them as well. I am 365801 and I make videos about male romance, BL manga, yaoi and all that good stuff. Thanks for watching to the end of this video. Take care, hope you're doing well, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!